Hey, how's it going, guys? We are live this Monday night. It's 10 p.m. Eastern. I'm Carson, aka Seawater19, and let me introduce my esteemed panel here. The beard, it looks like someone said like there's handles on the beard now. It's getting so massive and crazy. Andy, how is the beard this week?
I dare say it's getting pretty infinite. I hope I don't have a crisis with the length.
Is there such thing as like a multi-beard verse of some sort? Anyway, we got DruManchu, who he's doing his best. Drew, how you doing?
He's up there with the silver streaks in his beard, like Earth 2 beard. Right? We got Beard Prime down here. We're getting ready to punch holes in existence.
Yep. So if you guys couldn't tell, we're in part 3 of 3 of the Modern Men Crisis Trilogy, thanks to my, I guess we'll call this my wild card, the Technodrome, because why not? It was near. So, yeah, the Technodrome wild card gets it. I was so excited that I got to pick.
I'm going to hold on to this wild card here.
What in the world is that?
The Todd McFarlane trading card, bro.
Trading card. All right, before we get into our criticisms and the fun we had with this one, we got to get into that chat. We got Chris Barrett was first officially. What is going on, Chris Barrett? Nice to see you in the chat. Animale Comics, what is going on? This guy's been commenting on almost all my October Reads videos. Been really enjoying his comments as well as Chris Barrett's, of course. We got Ricky Markstat. Hello, Markstat69 is here. What is going on, Ricky? We've been having a lot of fun over on the Comic Core Discord server, so hop on over there. You never know, there might be random voice chats that pop up like the other day. So definitely don't forget to sub up in the description below. We got some lazy robot. Hopefully he's not controlled by Omax. We got D, Runt Comics. What is going on? D says, no one shall be searched Infinite Crisis.
Oh, you wait.
D, I'm going to do my best, man, but these two jabronis, oh my God. They're going to give it. I had to pop my back for the stream because I'm just preparing. Got to try to hold the line for Infinite Crisis tonight. It's going to get ugly, though, I think. But that's our chat. So we covered Crisis on Infinite Earths, the holy grail that is Crisis on Infinite Earths, the story. We covered Flashpoint, and you guys didn't want to vote for it, so I wildcarded to teach everybody a lesson. Here we are, part 3, Infinite Crisis. My personal favorite time to be a DC reader, in my opinion. I guess I'll just give the history of myself and Infinite Crisis. So when I got back into collecting, some of the first things I started reading was the Geoff Johns Teen Titans run. And I dabbled in and out of his Flash run. I have a couple issues of that. So I was familiar with who Hunter Zolomon, Zoom is, and really enjoyed that character. Really enjoyed seeing my boy Connor Kent and Tim Drake, Cassie Sandspark, and all the other Teen Titans over in Geoff Johns' Titans book. One of my all-time favorite runs. And, of course, when Johns got a chance to bring back Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, in 2005's Green Lantern Rebirth going into his ongoing. So there was a lot of Geoff Johns greatness at DC riding into Infinite Crisis. Then Wizard Magazine, of all places, started talking about this crazy cover on this book called Countdown to Infinite Crisis, which was going to be drawn by Jim Lee and painted by Alex Ross. Well, that sounds really cool. And I saw the people who were writing it, and the masterminds at DC at the time were guys like Grant Morrison, Greg Rucka, Mark Waid, and of course, Geoff Johns coming up with this whole big plan along with what Dan DiDio wants to do over at DC. So Countdown to Infinite Crisis happens, and it's a phenomenal issue in itself. Now, I know me and Drew got a chance to reread it. So, Drew, you said this was the best issue of everything we've read for this episode.
Honestly, Countdown to Infinite Crisis may be the best single issue of DC Comics that I've ever read, in my opinion. I think that it stays in its lane. I think that all the characters, we're going to talk about this a little bit. Me and Andy had a little bit of a pre-show discussion on it when the big overarching DC universe comes together. The characters look like a mishmash of styles. None of them all go together. There's no cohesiveness. And for some reason, this countdown book really has a cohesive style to the whole damn thing. Really great Ted Cord story. And then I felt like there's a big chunk that I'm missing in between that and the actual start of this Crisis event. But I really, really enjoyed that countdown issue. Rereading that was really got me hyped for the rest of this whole deal. And I kind of felt like I was let down by the rest of it because of how great that countdown book was.
Yeah, and I actually will not dispute what you said there to begin with, where you said this may be the best single DC Comics issue ever. It is up there in my opinion, especially like, post 2000 modern age stuff. I think this is as good as any of it gets. The DC Universe Rebirth one shot for me may be kind of close. That was really good too, of course, but this may be the tops for me just because like you actually get like the best Blue Beetle story ever. Unfortunately, he gets shot in the head in his best story, so it came at a huge cost, but it is definitely an awesome story if you're a fan of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold and them teaming up and that stuff. And you get a chance to see how much, he means or doesn't mean, I guess I should say, to the DC universe, unfortunately. But yeah.
I will say it's a really great kind of, and I wouldn't say Blue Beetle is totally street level, but I would say that more grounded second stringer actual participant in the universe who has the ability to look down on the people and how they react to all these events, and look up at Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and how they react to all these events. And it kind of sets the stage from Ted Cord's perspective, who has a really well-rounded perspective on this universe that, as we get into the story, we'll discuss what, Superman from Earth 2's perspective on the whole universe is after Crisis. But it's like really all going to shit. Like everything's going tits up for everybody from a lot of different perspectives, and to see it from Ted Cord first before that really gets you in the mindset of that this universe is very much lacking something.
Yeah, and then Countdown Infinite Crisis does more than a good job, especially like it has to wrap in these 4 crazy miniseries going on. Plus, I like when Blue Beetle, they use Blue Beetle to kind of give his perspective on the DC Trinity, which obviously that is huge going into Infinite Crisis, because at the end of the day, it starts and ends with the Trinity that is Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. So he talks about, his relationship with Batman throughout the way and how cold he's gotten. And, it's even evident in all the other Geoff Johns stuff. Like you see him get his face punched in by Hal Jordan in Green Lantern Rebirth with Guy Gardner cheering in the background. Still one of my all-time favorite panels. You see what, most people think of Superman, where they love him and they're nervous to be around him at the same time. And then everybody loves Wonder Woman, of course. But the miniseries, I believe there were 4 miniseries that led up to all of this. And I think it was like Villains United, where all the villains get together. There's, start that conspiracy with all of them and the 2 Lex Luthors. You have the Rand Thanagar War, which has,
color me not fucking interested at all.
Yeah.
From somebody who's like coming like, oh yeah, Adam Strange and the Hawkman people are going to fight. I'm like, oh God, I hope this isn't covered in the book. And thank God it wasn't.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. When that came out, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't think I bought a single issue of it either. I don't care about Hawkman. That's like the one DC character. He's basically like one of the Inhumans to me. And then, maybe I don't mind Adam Strange now that, he's having this great run on Strange Adventures. But then you have the Magic, I believe it was Day of Vengeance was the Magic book, where you kind of find out what's going on with Spectre being seduced by Eclipso, and now he doesn't have a host because Hal Jordan is alive and is the Green Lantern again. And then
in that book, because if he's not, I might go back and reread it.
He actually isn't.
Awesome.
That is Detective Chimp.
I'm down for Detective Chimp as long as Constantine's not in it.
And then what's the other one? I gotta think.
It's OMAC Project.
OMAC Project, of course.
Yeah.
So the OMAC Project was the 4th one, which that pretty much is the one that leads right out of Identity Crisis, because Batman, he trusts no one. He got mind wiped, and now he's keeping bigger tabs than ever on everybody and everything.
Comics was explained. You shut your dirty whore mouth. Kree versus Skrull is like North versus South, man. It's the Civil War. It's It is all things. It is the Great War. It's the World War I of comic wars.
Let's check the chat real quick. Then I want to get some thoughts from Andy. William Bird says, I was along for the ride from Identity to Infinite Crisis. Before I stopped buying new issues, it was a fun ride. Absolutely. Like I said, that stretch might be my favorite time to be a DC reader ever. D-Ronk says, the thumbnail for the show is one of my all-time favorite covers. That's Jim Lee having the two Superboys fight and Crypto biting Prime in his butt. So I really do. There's a reason I picked that thumbnail. It's one of my favorites as well. So, Andy, we made you go through Crisis on Infinite Earths. That was probably a huge headache. We made you go through Flashpoint. At least that was 5 issues. What in the world was your first impression on Infinite Crisis?
My first impression was that I finally found a way to read these books easier on Comixology. I found that if I go full screen and I go double page, it blows everything up, and I get the full experience of the page without having to use, watch guided view cut stuff off, or without having to use an awkward zoom every time I turn a page or something. So I finally figured that out. That helps this book read a lot better, in my opinion, digitally. But my main struggle with this is it was entertaining, but for some reason the pacing was really difficult for me, like the sub-story pacing. They did a really good job, like here's San Diego, or here's Texas, or here's the center of the universe, the little tick at the top of the page with the different color letting you know that you were kind of transporting to a different part in the DC universe. But then when you were there, it seemed like every page turn I was lost. I was in a different part of a battle, different part of a section. There wasn't really any kind of lead up to all of a sudden bouncing a lot back and forth. So that subplot or that sub-story pacing was really difficult to keep pace with or keep up with. And not having a better understanding of the characters or more of a history with the characters, like Drew said, because the artists kind of take their own little spin on some of the characters, or they do the retro stuff. I don't know who's who. They did a good job with Superboy and Superboy Prime and some of that. But at the beginning, I was lost. I really was lost. That first issue for me was really difficult, and it wasn't until the second issue that I felt a little more comfortable getting in there and reading. And it was by the fifth. I think the fifth was my favorite. I think the fifth is where things really started getting good for me.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that the first issue, they have a lot to sort out, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there's been 4 miniseries, plus the countdown, plus everything else that's happened. One thing they don't really give a lot of weight to is the Wonder Woman storyline going into this. All you know really is she's killed Maxwell Lord, but they do a terrible job of telling you why she killed Maxwell Lord. They kind of almost make it sound like she was getting revenge for Blue Beetle, but Maxwell Lord in the Wonder Woman comic actually used his telepathy, which you probably didn't even know he had because they didn't mention that. He used it to control Superman, and he was going on just this spree of violence. So to stop Superman from doing something, he would never forgive himself for, Wonder Woman did the unforgivable instead and killed Maxwell Lord. But it got leaked onto, public television in the DC universe, and that's where her image got, all the mudslinging, basically. But yeah, I think, the first issue, it has so much to set up in like 30 pages, basically. They did their best. I think it overall, for me, it was pretty well, but there's a few rough edges. But Drew, yeah. I know you're waiting to say something, so go ahead.
Andy's right. Setting wise, it's all over the place. Story pacing wise, it's all over the place. Aesthetically, it's all over the place. This book is all over the place. And I think that the more that it develops and the further you get into it, the more each of those things kind of has an opportunity to breathe on its own a little bit and kind of even out. But I would say for the first 2-3 issues of this thing, it's just like it's a hodgepodge of so much stuff that it's kind of hard to get it straight. And I think that there's a very straightforward, formulaic layout, kind of a boring layout to this book that's just such a dynamic story going on that not until it really hits its stride do the layouts kind of open up and become a little bit more dynamic in how they're telling the story. I think that these first, I would say at least 2 issues are kind of just so jam packed full of stuff that editorially that they could have trimmed a lot of fat and just kind of did a whole lot more showing and not telling. But there is a lot of different expositions going on the pages during these conversations between people. So like, especially this first issue where you're getting that overarching kind of narration from the reaction from Superman from Earth 2. The story just kind of trudges through that. I don't think it really does a whole lot to enhance it. I think you kind of just trudge through that until you kind of figure out what's going on. And a lot of that first issue for me was kind of wasted in that. I think that they use it as a bit of a crutch for the exposition, when that like vision of them like watching everything that's happened through this like shattered lens it's kind of a cool story concept, but I think that they don't execute it as adeptly as I think that they probably could have. And a lot of that clumsy storytelling does go into the second issue. I feel like by the time it hits the third issue, we are off and running, and it's very, very enjoyable. And even the confusing DC Crisis bullshit that they throw at you is kind of really well placed throughout at that point, but you kind of really have to know what's going on once before you get there. And I think that, yeah, the first issue is very clumsy.
Then we want to talk about the ending next, because we've mentioned Superboy Prime, Alexander Luthor, the original Superman. So this would be like, I was thinking about the dumbest analogy I could possibly think of today. And for some reason, I thought about Return of the King, Lord of the Rings. And what if that ended and there was a sequel where all of a sudden, like, Frodo's like, turn the boat around. We're not going to the Grey Havens. We gave up the Shire to the wrong people. We got to go take it back. So Gandalf and Frodo decide to go get their planet back, basically. I don't know why I thought of that, but it made me laugh, so I figured I'd share it with you guys. But what did you guys think about these guys coming back from, heaven, basically, and deciding, like, these guys ruined the earth we gave them. We made the ultimate sacrifice with everybody we know and love, and we have to take it back and do something about it, especially since this is the original superhero, the Golden Age Superman. Andy, what did you think about that?
That's where my brain really hit meltdown mode, where they were trying to figure. They did a really good job making you fall in love with one group versus another group of who was really trying to win out to save their Earth. Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth Prime. It was it got like I said, without a lot of pre-reading or a lot of history with DC, it was kind of hard to understand which character was from which Earth at times, but they helped out a fair bit. I enjoyed the dive back down to save that Earth. Or was it to bring, here we go. Now I'm looking, was it to bring their Earth back, or was it to save that Earth? It was to save that Earth because they were ruining it. Yeah.
A little bit of both. What about you, Drew Prime?
I think that it's very curious to me that Geoff Johns is like the guy who's like, in this story, is pretty much like, no, it's too dark. Bring the hope back. Right? And then in Flashpoint, he's the guy who's like, too much hope. Let's bring the dark back. And then in Rebirth, he's like, no, too much dark. Let's bring the hope back. It's like Geoff Johns is the guy on the wall of the DC universe, and he just can't figure out the dimmer switch. He's just like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I really dug the fact that it was kind of meta commentary on how dark and troubled the universe had become, and how he just wants shiny, happy Silver Age Superman stories to be told again. I kind of like that overall, and I think that it was a really good reveal at the end of issue 1. But then again, like I said, I thought the storytelling and the way they got there was kind of clumsy. And I think knowing what I knew about this story going into it, I kind of saw that again as like, what are they trying to hide from us this whole time? It's like this reveal that kind of doesn't even really need to be revealed. I think that the majority of the storytelling that matters in this first issue happens between the conversations between Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman, and to kind of like bring the bigger issue of this threat actually well, you don't see it as a threat yet. You think Superman's coming to save the day. You don't see him as, you don't get that heel turn until later on in the story. But it was kind of that surprise reveal that didn't need to be a surprise. You know what I mean? But I do dig it. I think that him punching his way out of there is out of what should be a perfect dimension is kind of a cool deal.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the surprise, I mean, when this came out and that surprise happened, I was shocked as all could be. Like, nowadays, obviously, it doesn't have near the effect because we know what happened and where the DC universe went from there. But you hadn't seen these characters in about, 20 years? It's characters I didn't think they're ever going to use again. They obviously never plan to use again. And especially when you're talking Golden Age Superman, the fact that they would bring him back and he's almost a bad guy basically here, but I mean, not really. If the more you think about it, and the more you could kind of justify his actions trying to save Lois and do anything for her, it just comes down to that master manipulator, Alexander Luthor. But before we continue, we got some comments we need to address here. We got Gore Vidal in the chat. He says, Wonder Woman made Infinite Crisis for me. The first issue drew me in immediately. That's how she needs to be written. John's channel, the best from Perez and Jimenez's runs. I agree. Wonder Woman was absolutely great in this run. William Bird says, I remember an Infinite Crisis trade had some changes made from the issues from when they were released. This is part of why I stopped buying new issues and started trade. I'll have to compare those at some point. I didn't realize there were any major changes. I know sometimes I'll do some dialogue cleanup or what have you, but interesting. I did not know that. And then we got the great Legend hopping in the chat. What is going on, Legend? Nice to see you in the chat tonight. Big thanks once again for him participating in my October Reads contest. I think he just finished up his video, and I'll definitely have to check that out on the rewind. So the next issue leads us into the whole Power Girl origin, which I won't cover too much because it was like one of those like plot holes that remained for 20 years. So they decided to kind of patch that up with the obvious solution of, making her, more or less the Supergirl from Earth 2. Basically. So she gains that, gets her memories back. So she has that relationship with Earth 2 Lois and that stuff. But you get to issue 3, and then that's where you kind of get back into the good Batman stuff where he's lost control of everything, which is an un-Batman thing to do, basically. So Brother Eye is just, whipping that ass. He's taking over people, literally taking names. And Batman knows like he's losing. And there's nothing. He just wants to take it all back. And that's when the Golden Age Superman shows up and basically gives him his ticket to take everything back. So what did you guys think about Golden Age Superman trying to make a deal with Earth 1 Batman?
I think you saw the Golden Age Superman kind of inspire Batman a little bit. Like you initially saw kind of a twinkle in Batman's eye because he had said, to our Superman, the real Superman, I guess the 616 Superman, if you will, that he, the last time, and I'll pull up the image because my favorite page in this whole thing is basically when he says, last time that you inspired anybody was when you were dead, which is so great. It's just like so great. But when he starts talking to Golden Age Superman, you can see a little bit of inspiration in his eyes, but it isn't until, and you can like kind of see him being swayed by his basically suggestion that they need to, start over. But then he questions him about Dick Grayson. And he's like, is Dick Grayson still a good guy? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, well, then, it's not all bad. There's something to save here. And then he tries to utilize kryptonite, which we then realize doesn't work on alternate reality Superman. So without Earth 2 kryptonite, he couldn't actually take him down. But he tried his best. He tried his batty best after yelling at Alfred and just wants to stitch him up and give him soup.
Yeah, Andy, I know you're probably like Batman's one of your favorite DC characters. So what did you think of his treatment early on in this?
I was kind of lost on that. I didn't realize that was specifically the Golden Age Superman until you had mentioned it tonight when we started talking. But it seemed really odd that Batman's going to be down in the dumps like that because of this situation. seemed like very little to push him down that far. I don't know if that's just the way they wanted to write it and they wanted to use him that way, but
I would definitely suggest you read Identity Crisis before you read this. I think
more Crisis, yeah.
Well, no, I would. I mean, at this point, don't go back and read Identity Crisis. God, why would you do that? But I think that what happened with Identity Crisis and everything leading up to this, and I'm spotty on a lot of it, but it really informs where these characters are at in a way that this story doesn't really open up and tell you. Yeah, they're all at each other's throats. Is basically at the best you can see of it. Is that, you know, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, who are DC Comics. You know, everybody else is, you know, say what you want about Flash, he's still a tertiary character compared to the Trinity. So, you know, so these characters are all kind of take their cues from those three who are kind of at each other's throats. You can tell that Batman's at his wit's end, but you just really don't have any sort of context for it. They don't really give it to you at all.
Yeah, and Identity Crisis, I guess just to attempt to sum up that book real quick. Sue Dibney, who was married to the Elongated Man, she was almost like an honorary member of the Justice League. She hung out with the team a lot. They got to know her and so on and so forth. She is murdered in her own home, and that causes basically all of the heroes to go on almost this witch hunt against all of the villains, one of which, who did not commit the murder, by the way, his name was Dr. Light. And they think Dr. Light committed the murder because he raped Sue Dibney on the Justice League satellite, and they didn't want to kill him, but he
just did that for funsies.
Yeah, he just did that for funsies. So they decided to basically give him a magical lobotomy and have Zatanna mind wipe him. But there was one guy who had nothing to do with this, who actually caught those Justice League members in the act, and that was Batman. And what they do with Batman when it's kind of like, imagine when, you know, go into the Watchmen, when Rorschach knew about everything the Watchmen did at the end of the comic. He's just like, you're going to have to kill me. What they did with Batman is they mind wiped him too. So the paranoia of Batman got higher and higher. When he finds out he got mind wiped, that's when he creates the OMAC project and all that fun stuff. And he trusts no one. And he becomes very cold and condemning and starts burning bridges. And like I said, when they just let even Hal Jordan come back, who did a lot of heelish things in the 90s, and all of a sudden he's just a good guy again, Batman doesn't buy that one for a while. So,
yeah, Hal was a dark side level villain. And they're just like, well, I mean, you said you were sorry.
I mean, that right there makes a lot more sense. Just the last 2 minutes of you talking starts putting a lot together for this.
Yeah, I think as enjoyable as I found this story, where the characters are deserves a lot more context than they give you. And I think that the Countdown book does a really good job of giving you that context without spoon feeding it all to you and make you feel like you're getting a catch-up issue. Which is what I think is really, really beautiful about it, is it just becomes about Ted Kord adjusting to the world around him. But in the meanwhile, you're getting all that exposition via story in a way that really catches you up. Again, I said there's a big chunk of shit that you don't really get in between. But I'm not going back to read about the Ranth-Thanagar War.
No, you don't have to. Trust me. But yeah, the story really starts to ramp up when you start seeing those, Alexander Luthor and Superboy Prime show their true colors. Basically, all Golden Age Superman he's just trying to save Lois, and he'll do anything to do so. But the real manipulator here is Alexander Luthor, and you kind of start to see, like, basically when Power Girl's kind of getting chummy with all of them, hanging around a little bit more, and then she figures out she's going to present a plan to Superman and Alex, but when she goes in, she sees what's really going on. And they have one of those towers from the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, basically with the husk of the Anti-Monitor on it. And on that tower, they have a hero that represents each of, like, the last remaining worlds from Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it just so happens that Kara, Power Girl, is a representative of Earth 2, so they're just going to use her for that totem, basically. So what did you guys think when they finally revealed this heel turn? Was this where the book finally got decent for you guys?
I think so, yeah, for me. I honestly need to read this 3 or 4 more times to have a lot of really good dialogue to explain how I feel about it. But this is where the pacing for me got more fun. My favorite page when you're getting deeper into this was where Superboy Prime knocked that chick's head off and he just freaks out and his hands are covered in blood. I think that was a little before where you're at in the book right now. But yeah, this is where it kind of really turned for me.
Yeah, it definitely focuses there. I think that you're getting in the first issue, it's just too all over the place, not really focused or boiled down into anything. And then you get 2 issues of basically you get Kara kind of getting her origin, which is cool. I dig that, but like kind of wasteful. I think that it does a lot to set up the main point here. And I think I could have done it a little bit, trim the fat a little bit and added a little bit more of the, Batman motivation and the Wonder Woman stuff and like how we got to where we were kind of storytelling in here to kind of smooth things out a little bit. But overall, I enjoyed that. But Power Girl, it's like, it's a boob window, man. That's why people are buying the book. They don't care where she came from. And it does a lot really to, inform the heel turn once it happens. So I can kind of forgive that. But yeah, this is where once you realize what the plot of this whole thing is going to be, it starts to make a lot more sense and allows you to kind of not have to focus on the periphery. Whereas when there's so much going on in issue 1, you don't really know what pieces are going to be important. And a lot of them are kind of just left by the wayside, to be honest. And it just doesn't have the focus that it needs until it hits this issue. I got to take a pee break. I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, so I think this is where the book gets really good for me, especially like once you start to go on that next issue where Superboy Prime, he's been hyping himself up for 2 issues. He's like, I love the yellow sun. I want to go enjoy the sun. Can I go visit Connor Kent now? Can I do this? Can I do that? Slow down there, buddy. We're not doing anything just yet. We're not going to reveal our master plan. So once Alexander Luthor basically has all of his totems, he's like, can I go? Can I go? He's like, just get out of here. Go pay Connor a visit. So this is where it gets next level for me. And it's some of my favorite stuff in comics ever is where you finally get to see Superboy Prime. He flies to Smallville, Kansas and knocks on the door and pays Connor a visit. So I guess to put a little bit of perspective on what was going on with Connor and why he's afraid to even go outside. In the Teen Titans run, it was revealed that he is not only a clone of Superman, but he's a clone of Lex Luthor. So he's half Kryptonian and half human. So he's not as powerful as, Superman would be. But at the same time, he was created not only by Cadmus Labs, but under the guise of Lex Luthor. So Lex can control him. There's actually an issue around, I think it was Teen Titans issue 24, where he does gain control of Connor and he uses him and kind of uses the Teen Titans as the test to see if, he can gain full control. And Connor ends up just annihilating the Titans, basically. He beats up his own girlfriend. He takes out his best friend, Tim Drake Robin, and the rest of the Titans have to fight him. Meanwhile, they also cross over with the Outsiders, and they turn their version of Brainiac into regular Brainiac. So it was Lex Luthor and Brainiac together they have to defeat. So after that storyline, Connor, he takes himself out of the game, basically. He just goes home. He takes his ball and he goes home, basically. So that's why Superboy, he doesn't want to do anything. So this is why when Prime goes and knocks on his door, he's not just leaping to action. So obviously this is where it goes up shit creek without a paddle, is where he calls the Titans. They bring the JSA, they bring Doom Patrol, and they start killing a lot of no-names. So, Andy, you said you love the scene. I'll let you kind of talk more about it.
Yeah, and right before that, you get an awesome page out of here where Booster Gold's looking for this Blue Beetle Scarab, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They basically find the next Blue Beetle, which is a really cool a bit they add in there, too. But that's a case in point right there where they jump from that to that just in one page. And then you turn the page and they jump again. So as far as the pacing is still kind of struggling there for me. But then leading up into that back.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Andy froze. Yeah, I agree with Andy on that Blink If You'll Miss It, Jaime Reyes debut. it doesn't do a whole lot to really build him up as a character yet. But it's cool that we get a new Blue Beetle. I dig that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoy the fact that they kind of worked back in the Scarab, because with Ted Kord, obviously he didn't use that thing at all. So Andy's back.
Holy sheet.
Wow, holy sheet indeed. That's the first time that's ever happened since we had Fiber put in. But just leading into that crypto getting involved, and just like Drew.
There he goes.
Uh-oh. He got...
Man, was Captain Cold in this story? Because we sure are getting a lot of Frozen Andy.
Someone punched through their crisis wall and knocked out Andy's internet. All right, we'll go ahead and power on here without Andy. What do you think of Superboy Prime in this scene where he's punching people's heads off, he's ripping an arm off, he's going crazy, he's crying like a baby?
Yeah, it definitely gives you the opportunity to see that he's kind of yet to mature as a human being, but is so OP compared to everybody else. It's a really good description there of Superboy Prime's power, that he just doesn't understand how strong he is, so much as like he's just like everybody's gonna die by his hand at the end of this damn thing.
Yeah, and I like you mentioned that scene earlier where Batman whipped out the kryptonite ring on Golden Age Superman. I think they basically did that to also kind of explain, like, that kryptonite ring wouldn't work on Superboy Prime either.
Yeah,
he has no weaknesses.
No, Superboy Prime is that dude.
Yeah. So he has, so far, I think they established Red Sun, darkness, and his bad attitude are his weaknesses, basically. So it ends when the Flash shows up.
We got him back. Are you back?
Okay, Andy's back. So
I'm not sure what's going on, but
could be weather related, Andy. You never know.
Yeah, it could be those red Crisis lightning storms. Who knows? But yeah, the Flash shows up. He brings Kid Flash with him. He brings Golden Age Flash with him, basically, or Jig Garrick. And they do the old, let's run the guy into the Speed Force because we can't do anything else with him. And this is where this is probably like one of the weirder scenes, in my opinion, just because somehow he's able to go say goodbye to his wife, Linda, and his kids. But Linda's like, you're not going to bury Al and me, you little jerk. And then just grabs her kids, touches Wally, and then they all get sucked into the Speed Force for the duration of the story. So once again, the Crisis Flash curse is in full effect here, where we basically lose a Flash for a while. So they suck him into the Speed Force. You don't see him for a while. And then, you go on with Alexander Luthor and then Lex. You finally get to see those two guys meet, which they don't really tell you too much about the fact that there's two Lex Luthors up until this story. I think I did read in an interview or a Wizard magazine that you can tell the difference between the two Lexes, where our Lex has green eyes, but Alexander Luthor has blue eyes. And they do the same thing with the Flashes, too. They have different colors of eyes per Flash. So Barry has blue eyes, and Bart has like these brownish hazel eyes. So, eye collars. Who would have thought that was such a minute detail that they put in here?
Interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not all printed at a size where you can see the color of their eyes at all times. So that's also a bit of a pain in the ass. Kind of keeping all of these characters that are exactly the same damn character straight is kind of tricky.
Yep, so is the DC, being a DC fan. I mean, I think the first cover from George Perez suits it well. Like, you just see the DC Trinity, but then in the backgrounds, there's two different versions of them, basically. So for Batman, you have Nightwing and Robin, and then obviously on Wonder Woman, you got Donna Troy and Cassie, and then Superman, you have Superboy and Supergirl. So just in that cover alone, if they have that many different versions of themselves in one Earth running around, just wait till we introduce the multiverse and you get more versions of them. So
true story.
It's lumping all these past things in together. It is a lot of insanity. So eventually we get Earth 2 back. They use the powers of this totem they've created, and they somehow try to explain down the line where all four of the miniseries, why they happened, why did he get the villains involved, why did Thran have to be next to Thanagar, why did we need magic, so on and so forth. Basically, there's a lot of jargon to tell you that it was for this totem, how we're going to control it, and basically they use it to start by bringing back Earth 2, and immediately after the big battle of Prime, you get to see all of the Earth 2 origin characters get sucked into Earth 2, even though the main conflict over there is when Earth 2 Superman thinks he's saved Lois. He hasn't. And then that's where you get the heartbreaking cry of the Golden Age Superman that is so loud that 616 Superman, if you will, can hear it on his Earth and flies over there. And yeah, that's where it really goes down. So what did you guys think about the Supermen finally meeting halfway through this?
Go ahead, Drew.
It's about time. We just let's just get to where we're going here. It's going to be one Superman punching another Superman until only one Superman stands. Kind of the way that these crises need to end up. You got multiple Supermen. They're going to be one Superman.
Yeah, and I kind of do like the justification of Earth 2 Superman here, even though, they got to have a reason to fight. They always do. But he's just like, Lois was doing good. Then you showed up and corrupted my Earth, so there's no saving her now. And he's just seeing red because he lost the love. It's the last thing he had left to love in the universe, basically, or the multiverse even, is when Lois dies. That was the last shred of thing he had just clinging on to humanity, basically. So when he lost Lois, he lost basically his whole world. So a heartbreaking moment there, but luckily Deus Ex Machina further strikes when Golden Age Wonder Woman shows up. She kind of just disappeared off the face of the map in the original Crisis, but here she's back again to kind of rein in the regular Wonder Woman here, and she kind of explains like, hey, you kind of suck at being a hero right now, all this, but one thing you kind of need to remember is how to be human, and you need to go help Superman. So she actually goes to Earth 2, and you kind of get this nice moment where they explain all this stuff to Superman, what's going on and why it's important to be Superman, and how his Earth was not perfect because it did need Superman, and the perfect Earth, of course, does not need Superman.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is where Alexander Luthor gets even more nuts. He decides to bring back the multiverse completely now. They use the Black Adam to say the word Shazam to further fuel their device. So when all this chaos is going down, when they bring in the infinite Earths, the people on Earth 2 can't find their way back home. So they know that this, and everything is just going nuts on regular Earth. The Omax, they're distracting all the heroes. That they dropped a chemo, this chemical-related villain got dropped on Bloodhaven, so all of the heroes would have to go there to help out as many people as possible. That was Nightwing's base of operations, by the way, if you guys didn't know, so that pretty much restructures his whole book going forward. But luckily, Nightwing wasn't there. Dan DiDio keeps trying to kill Nightwing around this point, but luckily he was out of his city. So, yeah, there's a whole story about that, I'm sure. But basically, this is where Batman's plan comes into play, where he needs to find OMAC and disable him, but somebody else needs to go to the origin of what's going on and help out there. But Batman, he pretty much knows he can't recruit anyone at this point. No one trusts Batman. He doesn't trust anybody. The only person left who will listen to him is Dick Grayson. And that's when Dick Grayson decides to go to Titan's Towers, which is the best point of communication, and activate his responder. But unfortunately, the entire world is just too busy at this point dealing with everything I just mentioned, basically. And there's only one person who shows up to help and aid in his quest to get to the Antarctic, and that's Superboy. Superboy has been given the plans, or planted the plans, I guess, by Lex Luthor. He snuck into where they were healing him at and just kind of dropped off any intel he had. Yeah, go back to that scene. That is a great panel. We haven't even talked about Phil Jimenez at all. And
I didn't realize that was going to auto kick it in.
No.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's perfect.
That was the giant spread leading right up to what you were discussing. Is probably my favorite part artistically of this book.
Yeah, and I think, I know you guys probably don't like some of the art in this. I'm guessing we'll talk about that, I guess, here in a second. But I love all the artists they incorporate in here. I love when they go to Earth 2, they actually do have the George Perez stuff. Usually I would hate that they do that in a book, but at least they picked an artist with a reason and a place with a reason. Unlike when they did it, like, for instance, Deceased #1, they wanted to make Apocalypse look different and get a fill-in artist, but it just looked awful on the page. But at least here, that looked like, in my head, what Golden Age Superman should look like, because that's what he looked like in Crisis exactly. So I dug that. I like the Phil Jimenez stuff, and if you're going to get a fill-in for Phil Jimenez, he may as well grab Ivan Rice because he would be basically the future artist for DC at this point in time. So what did you guys think of the art in this as a whole?
I liked it a lot. Normally, a DC read I find to be much more inconsistent than this. There was a lot more consistency in this book, to be honest with you, with the different artists. More so than past DC reads. I know Drew is gonna Drew's gonna have a little bit more of a hot take on the consistency aspect because there were inconsistencies, but this was more consistent than some books I've read in the past. And like that panel I just showed you, when you start talking about infinite Earths and all the other different Earths, and when they start trying to smash them together artistically, they did a lot of like just really out there panels that were awesome. I really enjoyed that. I felt like this is a real treat to look at going through.
Let me get the turtle ready. Here we go. All right, go ahead.
I don't think you need to. I think that this book is clearly inconsistent in its art, but it's very consistent in its inconsistencies. And I think that the fact that it is multiple universes and multiple realities kind of clashing together, the way that they kind of have things going all over the place, the fact that there are multiple artists, I think they utilize them properly. I also think that once you get to this point in the story, you're getting more dynamic panel layouts. You're getting more dynamic storytelling options via the art than you were getting at the beginning of this story as a whole. And I think that while I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the design choices of the aesthetic of the DC universe, that is personally my taste. And has nothing to do, I think, with my criticism of this book in any way, shape, or form. I think that, like I said, inconsistent but consistent in its inconsistencies in a way that I think editorially really works in a way that it shouldn't, to be honest.
That's a much better way of describing how I was feeling. Even though there were inconsistencies in the art, I feel like the way it was pushed or all put together, it felt a lot less like it was being inconsistent. It felt deliberate to the point where it was actually helping the story.
Gore and Chaos are having a secret conversation in the chat.
Yeah, I was just
some sort of code language. What is that, Spanglish?
We got Chaos and Comics in the chat. What is going on, man? We also got Barbarian Kung Fu hanging out in the chat tonight. And we had Gore Vidal earlier saying the DC universe is a little overwhelming, but that's what I always found appealing about it. It's so rich with history, never bothered me. I didn't know the character's history. It just made me more curious. And that is me exactly. Like when I read some of this stuff for the first time ever, it made me just want to do a little bit more homework. It's just like, for instance, there'd be a character like Hawkman. I'm like, pass. He can do whatever he wants. But then, like, there'd be like Earth 2 Superman. I'm like, why are there 2 Superman? Then I want to go and find out. So just makes you read more, I suppose. And we got MJ in the chat. What is going on? MJ, who had a pretty good idea for a future episode. What are the best comics of 2020? That sounds like a good future topic that I don't have the answer for right now.
I have the answer. I answered it as the Comic War. Right below that, X-Men rules.
And then we got my first subscriber ever, Fish Tropic, hanging out in the chat. What is going on, Fish Tropic? All right, so this is like where I want to talk about 2 of my favorite tie-in titles to Infinite Crisis, and that was the Teen Titans ones of Teen Titans issue 33, and then the annual to Teen Titans, where you kind of get more of the story of where Nightwing and Superboy got the team up in one of the issues. I think that was issue 33, where you get to see them basically go to they're making their way to the Antarctic to get to this thing, and you get to see their journey there and all the crap that they have to fight, and just, kind of still how weakened Connor is because he got his ass whipped by Prime. He is not 100%, and I think that's why he's still, a little weakened when he have that final battle. And then the annual covers the last day that Cassie and Connor get to spend together before going to battle. And you actually get to see how Cassie, Wonder Girl, gets tied into this, because she just kind of shows up when they are already there. But she was actually, like, if you read that tie-in, it explains how, like, they were going together after a while. So, and I really like their dynamic that they have. I kind of wish we would have got more of Nightwing and Connor in comics in general. He was mainly teamed up with Tim, but you never really got to see him teamed up with Dick Grayson until like the Young Justice cartoon, basically. But I always felt like they were put together because that's what the Trinity should have been in Infinite Crisis to avoid a lot of this heartache. They had to be the new Trinity in this to show, the people who, they preceded the, how to do it right, more or less. So we get to the final part of the story. Well, the final part, really. We'll get into the kind of the Prime stuff, but they go to the little tuner fork gimmick thing. There's infinite Earths. There's no one else that can help. And I just love when they start setting people free and stuff. You see the splash page with all of the heroes on there, but then Cassie's like, isn't that Black Adam? Do we want to set him free? And Connor's just like, hell yeah, we want to set him free. So then they let him go, and then it's just chaos from there. And I know one of your guys' favorites was in this battle, Psycho Pirate. So what did you guys say about Psycho Pirate getting, destroyed by Black Adam?
Psycho Pirate is the worst fucking character in the history of comics. Psycho Pirate is the dumbest fucking idea, the worst design, and honestly has two purposes. That is to make Crises seem like he needs to be there, and to make Tom King's Batman fucking terrible. Psycho Pirate's terrible. He's awful. He gets the Constantine treatment from this point forward. Anything that you want me to read and has Psycho Pirate in it, my horse will be sick.
I'll just throw this up there for you, Carson. Here you go. This is how I felt. He just goes out and just does like the Larry Moe and Curly and just blammo, done.
Yeah, I figured you guys would enjoy that scene just because, it seems like I don't mind Psycho Pirate. I never have, but for whatever reason, a lot of people who are like my friend Mike on the Comics of the Atom podcast, when we read Animal Man, he hated Psycho Pirate. It just cracked me up. I'm like, yeah, everybody else I've read a Psycho Pirate story with hates Psycho Pirate so much. It just cracks me up.
It's the worst idea. It's just stupid.
What's wrong with the idea?
It's just fucking corny. It's just, it's like, well, who can we get to be the big foil for all these OP heroes of the DC universe? What about Psycho Pirate? Who's he? Who's this guy who kind of wears a dress and a mask and well, what does he do? He's got this mask. And what's the mask do? Oh, it controls people's emotions. That's so fucking dumb.
Hey, Chris Barrett says Psycho Pirate is the watcher of DC continuity.
No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's not anything of anything. He's just a fucking bad idea that they keep running with. Psycho Pirate sucks. Psycho Pirate is just fucking terrible. It's just a fucking terrible character. It's corny. His design's awful, and make me want him to succeed on one level or another. Make him interesting, but he's not. He's not interesting. He's just some fucking tool in a terrible costume with stupid powers that just shows up around other cool things happening, and people are like, "Oh, Psycho Pirate's here." He's dumb.
Have no fear, Psycho Pirate's here. I like it.
No more silly faces.
Yeah, yeah. So Psycho Pirate's done for. Things are looking up for the heroes, but all of a sudden, the Flash shows up. And he's in Tokyo talking to the female doctor.
Chaos and Comics is in timeout.
And he just goes, he's back. And then you get that final splash panel of Superboy Prime. He made himself a suit to absorb solar power and the Speed Force somehow. I guess he's a good tailor as well. But nonetheless, Superboy Prime's back, so he goes to the battle. And you get the round 2 of the Battle of the Superboys. And there's a lot of whining and crying. I said if they ever made an animated feature of this, I would love to see Hayden Christensen as the voice actor for Superboy Prime. Just saying. I think that'd be perfect casting.
He hates sand.
I hate him. I hate Connor Kent more than sand.
He's coarse. He gets everywhere.
So they have their big battle. And Alexander Luthor, he's still manipulating the cosmos. And the team that actually goes to the center of the universe has their one moment. Firestorm somehow makes all their powers lop off the tip of Alexander Luthor's finger. They had to go all the way across the universe to do that.
I immediately thought of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids when that happened.
So basically in the battle, Prime, he has no fighting skills, basically. You got to remember this. He's just a kid. He was from basically our version of Earth. No one's ever had really time to train him. So everything he does is just clumsy and crazy. But he has the powers of Silver Age Superman, who is the most powerful hero of all time ever, basically. He could sneeze and blow up a universe. So Superboy Prime
around on a chain.
Superboy Prime is just fighting everything everywhere. And then that's when Superboy, Connor Kent, tackles him into the tuning fork. And that's when they basically win the day for the most part. But unfortunately, it does take the life of Connor Kent in a very emotional scene that they killed my boy. What have they done to my boy? But yeah, tearjerker for me for sure. What did you guys think of the boy Connor Kent went out here?
I love Connor Kent in this book. I think he's great.
Agreed. And that whole scene at the end was actually kind of tear-jerking a bit. I'm like, oh, they're really playing this out. They're really going to go there. But it gave a good weight or heaviness to the whole situation, because I mean, how good going through all of that, if nobody was going to die, how enjoyable would the story have actually been at all? I mean, there's no sacrifices. Come on.
Yeah, and I think that you knew at this point, right, when Superboy Prime kicks Crypto, that Connor's going to do everything it takes to whoop this dude's ass. Everything it takes.
Yeah, so when he does sacrifice himself, kills that little tuning fork thing with anti-monitor on it, it makes a whole new Earth and kind of, well, it doesn't really reset everything, but there are some things manipulated. We won't go into that because timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, as usual. And
they leave a blank slate enough for the writers coming forward to kind of put their own spin on things. Like what I can't even remember the exact wording. With something like it's like a copy, but some things are different. Like, and they don't even go into like what things are. It's just like one of those. It's like, yeah, it's almost the same. Some things might be different, but it's almost the same.
Yeah, they mess with, like, they bring back the fact that Joe Chill killed Batman's parents was one of the main things, especially since they just had the Superman Batman storyline where Batman clearly didn't know who killed his parents, so he went after Metallo, and that's when Batman and Superman met in that story for the first, well, not the first time, but in that story to make the comic. But anyway, let's get back to Infinite Crisis. So Alexander Luthor, he's done. He's just causing whatever havoc he can. There's not really much else he can do. His powers are slowly starting to deplete because he used them all, manipulating the universe. Then Superboy Prime, he is just in full crybaby mode at this point. And what do the villains do? They're like, well, we're still teamed up, so let's team up and go take over Metropolis, because if Metropolis falls, so can anywhere else. So that's where the big war happens for issue 7. Alexander Luthor's there. He tries to kill Batman. Nightwing jumps in the way, and they kind of pull the old Duke from G.I. Joe, where he was supposed to die in G.I. Joe the movie, but he was going to kill Nightwing, but then people got mad, so it was just like, he's okay at the very end somehow. It's like written into an extra panel where he clearly died in that panel. Like, come on.
He's totally dead in the next one. Hey, he's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so Batman pulls a gun on Alexander Luthor. I remember the first time I read the scene, I did not like it, but after a while I kind of accepted it. I'm like, yeah, he's still kind of nuts. But actually, I want you guys to talk about that, and then we'll got to talk about the OMAC satellite, because I forgot about that.
Wait, go ahead, Drew. I've got too far in the book.
I was reading the chat, so I was just distracted.
I was asking about Batman and guns.
Batman doesn't like guns, but then sometimes he likes guns.
Well, then this one, he pulls out the good old Desert Eagle, and I'm like, hey, here's another Batman with a gun scene. I'm like, wasn't expecting this, but...
That was just for Comics Misexplained. I know he loves Batman.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I forgot about the whole storyline to mention before that, where they actually go up to the OMAC satellite, because they do have one of my favorite scenes in the whole comic, and that's where Hal Jordan, the man who knows no fear, he's just sitting there whistling, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And him and Green Arrow, they're talking about how they're going to go to a baseball game next week. Maybe my favorite bit of dialogue in this whole thing.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah, and then I just like the team he composed of, because Batman has a plan for all of these people, except for maybe Booster, because Booster's the one who knew how to get to the satellite because he went forward in time and cheated, basically. But I just like when Green Arrow's like, All right, everyone has their assignments. What about me and Batman? You can kind of see he's starting to get a little lighter hearted at this point. He's not completely lighter hearted yet because the gun scene later, but he just goes, I just wanted to see if you'd actually show up. Laughs. So I just love the dynamic that this team has. Like, I wish I like the Justice League book. We covered Tornado's Path on here, and we got your guys' thoughts about that, but they kind of should have just made that their Justice League right there. I think the chemistry those characters have is so much better than the chemistry the characters would have in the Brad Meltzer Justice League book, in my opinion.
I can't disagree with that. I really liked how they discussed a lot of the old Justice League drama via the Countdown book, and it kind of showed you where everybody stood with each other in a way that was kind of illustrative of the fact that a lot of those guys knew they didn't belong all along. I kind of dug that dynamic, and I think that kind of would have had a similar kind of dynamic if that became the Justice League team. Booster is on your Justice League all the time. That seems to be like the best way to go. Booster Gold rules.
Yeah, and they have the new guy, Blue Beetle, who would have been a good for all of your questions being answered.
Right, he'd be that. He'd run that that
who's amazing
young Spider-Man role, where it's like you got to explain to the kid what's going on. I think that but shout out to Howler Mouse. I know he loves himself some Booster Gold.
Gore Vidal doesn't appear. I don't know if he likes Booster Gold either, based on some of the chat stuff. I still love me some Booster. I'm sorry, guys. He's one of my boys. But anyway, back to issue 7, where we do get to see whiny, cry Superboy Prime. He's came up with a plan of his own to restart the universe. It's not going to work, but he's
just a brat.
So yeah, he's just this annoying brat. So he's like, I'm gonna fly to Oa and throw it and cause the Big Bang, which probably wouldn't work, but hey, it's gonna cause a lot of damage nonetheless. So he flies to Oa, and then you guys see all these like space-bound characters take flight away from Metropolis, including both Supermen and all that good stuff. And Kara, of course. But luckily they hold back Kara. So it comes down to a fight on Oa and the Green Lantern. Superboy Prime takes out some no-name Green Lanterns, of course. But Guy Gardner is there to draw that thin green line with the army of Green Lanterns. And then there's this Green Lantern named Mogo, and he's actually a planet.
Okay, that makes more sense now.
Yeah, so that's where the final battle takes place. After they go through this like big green wall of Green Lanternness, they land on Mogo, and Mogo orbits himself within distance of a red sun. So this is the actual one weakness of all of the Superman is red sun energy. They all use yellow sun energy, so the red sun energy siphons that away. So they're able just to fight like normal men at that point. So
well, I like the fact that all three of them just ended up pushing him through the sun to melt his armor off of him.
Yeah.
Come out the other side. So now he's just back to where we started, right?
Well, it also depowers him as well because it's a red sun.
Yeah, he can't recycle the yellow energy. I guess they established that suit can hold. So, yeah, they're just fighting like, men at this point. And Superboy Prime just starts wailing on his mentor, his father figure, Earth 2 Golden Age Superman. And this is where we have to say goodbye to the original superhero, which this is the one I was kind of surprised they let Geoff Johns do, and that's kill off Golden Age Superman.
I don't think they put any constraints on Geoff Johns. That to me,
no way, is one of the things that has caused him to be a little hackish in his most recent activities.
But I think I dig it here because it's kind of their way of saying that we're moving on, we're making something new out of this. Multiverse. We're going to have a new multiverse, but we're not going to go back to the way Superman was.
I really enjoyed that panel, and it gave a lot of closure because when he's laying there, he realizes what Lois had seen earlier in the series when she was laying there, and he was waiting for her to finish her sentence. She never did, and it added closure, and it carried a lot of weight, in my opinion. I always read these things and take a grain of salt with them. They never, how of them ever actually stay dead? But this was actually really cool the way they did it. Looking up at the stars like that, and he sees one day you'll see they're still out there, and he says Lois's name and then passes. So I mean that was actually really cool.
Yeah, I did dig that final scene where his last word was Lois. So that At
least it wasn't Martha.
Yeah, you're right. So yeah, basically the final battle ensues. They all end up just passing out anyway, and the Green Lanterns show up, and they're able to put Prime in a cage and put him right in the middle of that red star, basically, so he can't recharge.
Oh, don't skip over the Joker stuff, man.
No, we're getting there. So you get the resolution with Superboy Prime. That's when you kind of start cutting to your epilogue. So the first one, we'll just go to the Joker stuff. So Andy, I'll let you take over on the Joker.
Finally, Joker in these scenes, and they melt Luthor's face off. Right? That was Luthor, right?
Alexander Luthor, right?
Alexander Luthor. They just melt his face off. He's got that giant tack, that electric tack in his palm. And he just goes to town on him, and he's just
slaps
laughing
him in his melted face.
It's like, that's ruthless. Oh, yeah. Boy. And they end up just killing him right there in the alley.
Oh, Luthor has the best line in the whole thing at that point there. Post, you were better when you were dead, is he's basically just like, yeah, you made the big mistake. You didn't let the Joker play. Right?
Yeah,
that's what happens when you let the Joker play.
Early on, where like they have all these villains and villains. You pretty much recruited everybody except for the Joker, and Joker feels a little bit left out at this point. So it's just a great little character moment. And it's just like, why not, I guess, at that point? Like, they've thrown everything else at the wall. Let's just have Joker be the one to kill off Alexander Luthor once and for all. So that was a pretty fun way to end that storyline. And then the other one kind of establishes what's going on with the Trinity. Like, their bond is stronger than ever after being shattered at the beginning. So it was kind of a nice way to end it, as opposed to the way it started. So you kind of see the importance of the DC Trinity as a group. But this is where things get interesting going into the DC line of books now, because they're establishing that the Trinity, they're being taken out of continuity for 1 year. So all of they go on Rumspringa Infinite Crisis take place in that story called 1 year later. So that allows fresh storylines, new writers, clean slate for most books without having to make a new number one or anything like that, or a complete reboot. So I thought that was really awesome back in the day. Meanwhile, they have one of my all-time favorite books, 52. So 52 was the weekly series that DC put out, written by Greg Rucka, Geoff Johns, Mark Waid, and Grant Morrison, and one of the more underrated book runs, in my opinion. A lot of good stuff. They pull a lot of C-listers, and they dedicate that book to them. The characters they pick, they're not allowed to appear in 1 year later books at all. So you don't know the fates of characters like Booster Gold, Steel, Adam Strange, Animal Man, Starfire, so on and so forth, Elongated Man. So basically, you don't know if they live or die past 52. And actually, the biggest one probably is Black Adam, who has this crazy arc on Kondak where, he basically gets to form his own version of the Shazam family, and it just goes to hell from there, of course, because it's Black Adam. But yeah, you get a lot of great storytelling post Infinite Crisis, and some of my favorites, obviously Teen Titans, because you get to see the impact of the team after they lost Connor, especially on Cassie and Tim Drake Robin. Superman actually had a pretty good run after Infinite Crisis. Geoff Johns and Kurt Busiek tag teamed the title. They restored Adventures of Superman to give that its original numbering back. It's pretty cool just because you get to see Superman. He has to be Clark Kent because he has no powers, and it's one of my recommended reasons not too many people talk about. So
I think you choose kind of a hard sell when you're like, hey, no, there's 52 books. It's weekly. It came out for a whole year, and well, who's in it? Well, the characters that we can't sell in any other fucking book because they're not Batman or Superman. It's kind of a hard sell, but I what I've read of it, I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, they took their four most premier writers and decided to give their C-list characters a chance in that book, and I wish that's something DC would do more often. Bruce Wayne pops up in that book from time to time, but he is nowhere near a main character. Like, he has this whole thing that they do a Namda Parbat, but it doesn't take over the story. People rise up, like the Renee Montoya question has a great arc in it. Of course, the Elongated Man has his arc in it. Even Wonder Girl has a little bit.
Bring back Batwoman in that story.
Batwoman has a huge arc where she, they introduce Kate Kane and they make the new Batwoman. Even though I did notice for the speculators out there, in the last page of issue 7, she is in that splash panel. So I'm pretty sure that predates that 52 stuff. So, Anyway, I think that pretty much does it for Infinite Crisis. So now all we got to do is give it a score. So, Andy, what are your final thoughts and score on Infinite Crisis?
I'm going to go 9.2.
Nice.
I enjoyed it. I probably would have enjoyed it, talking about it a lot more had I read it 3 or 4 times. Unfortunately, once again, I procrastinated more than I should have and didn't start reading until this morning. And then if I had read Countdown to Infinite Crisis, it probably would have made a lot more sense, and probably should have asked some questions with you and Drew before we went on the air and had maybe a little group conversation. But I'm going 9.2. It was enjoyable, and I feel like that's one that I'm going to enjoy more every time I go back and read it more.
What about you, Drew?
Countdown to Infinite Crisis gets a 9.8 gold label, double signed by both cover artists, Jim Lee and Alex Ross. Infinite Crisis gets itself a nice 8.6. It's got a couple crinkles here and there. Somebody left maybe a little condensation ring on the back of it. It's got definitely room for improvement, but overall very enjoyable, high quality storytelling. And I think, what did I give Flashpoint? Because I think overall this is a better story than Flashpoint. I just don't think it executes as well. I think that this is probably, if I had to pick one of the 3 of the Crises that we read, this is the one that I'd want to read again.
Yeah, for me, I think I'm gonna have to go 9.8 on this one. It's near mint all day. I'd say 9.8 gold label. It's signed by John. It's got a little remark in the corner by Jim Lee and all that good stuff. And maybe you have Phil Jimenez sig, but I love this story. Like I've said many times, it was my favorite time to read DC Comics. Just everything Geoff Johns had his name on for me was running full throttle. They let him have his plans in all of his titles, and this was kind of like where all those plans met up. Even those JSA characters you see in the background, those were his characters from his JSA run. So I thought that was kind of a cool little extra as well that didn't really need to take over. But yeah, like you said, Countdown Infinite Crisis, phenomenal issue. Up there, maybe top 5 best individual reads ever, easily. It's the best Blue Beetle comic easily ever. That's for sure, in my opinion. Tie-ins, they're not completely necessary, especially like those first 4 miniseries. Like the OMAC one wasn't too bad. Villains United wasn't too bad. But yeah, you can probably skip the other 2, in my opinion. The Magic one, I don't even think I ever read. But
Andy, go back and read that Countdown book.
Yeah, for sure.
It's good. It lives on its own, and I think it does a lot to give you a lot of context for this run altogether.
Yeah, and just here open in the tab for Comixology right now because it's a free download for Comixology. You don't even need unlimited. It's free to everybody.
That's awesome.
Yeah, go. Hey, if you're in the chat and you haven't read Countdown to Infinite Crisis, go read it. It's fantastic. It'll make you want to read more Ted Kord Blue Beetle stories.
And then I think it does what a big event should do. It should make you want to read the follow-up comics, basically. So I really dug the 1 year later structure. I think a lot of books used it to their advantage and gave themselves that awesome fresh start. And like I said, I really dig the 52 weeks series. I think it's an awesome series. Doesn't get enough love. But like you said, it is kind of a hard sell, especially nowadays where it's like you have to invest in 52 issues of just one title, and there's all kinds of spinoffs and stuff that happened during that. So
that's what makes the digital and that DC Universe subscription so worth it.
It was a great experiment back in the day, but then eventually they watered it down with future projects that didn't have near the success of 52. So now that we've read all of these crises, what's your overall take on the DC universe now, Andy? Would you like to read more DC, or are you just like, no more, please, never again with Crisis?
This makes me desperately need a break from DC. It's a lot to absorb. It's a lot to take in if you haven't spent a great deal of time reading DC before. Not even a great deal of time. Call it a year. If you got a year's worth of DC experience under your belt, you're probably way more comfortable than when I was reading these books. That's to say that after a little bit of break, I wouldn't be hesitant to go back and read these again. Like Drew said, these are very enjoyable, well put together stories to a degree. Some of them grade higher, some of them grade lower, but it's still good work in the end.
Now, would you have a favorite Crisis, or you would recommend to people overall in the middle of these 3?
Of the last three, I think Flashpoint was probably the more fun book to read, and I think this one, Infinite Crisis, was probably more rewarding story-wise.
What about you, Drew?
I think that over the time of reading Infinite Crisis for the first time, or sorry, Crisis on Infinite Earths for the first time, this for, I believe, the second. I believe I've read this before. I can't really place it. I know I didn't read that Countdown book before, even though I have like 2 or 3 copies laying around here somewhere. I hadn't read it, and I very much enjoyed that. I would say that I wouldn't say I want to read more DC stuff, but I think that I really respect the job that DC editorial did with the beginning of Rebirth so much more, because they went to painstaking detail of folding everything in from all the multiverse kind of in on top of itself in a way that really made sense, in a way that I don't think that they accomplished with the streamlining or the re-expanding of the DC universe over and over again through these stories. I think that the fact that that kind of ended with a whimper the way it did is a little bit more disappointing to me in the end. But I think that if you read DC Rebirth and then like the first 6 issues of every book that they released, there's just so much skill that went into crafting that editorially from that standpoint of just making a cohesive universe, and in a way that they haven't done since. And I think that it took them a while to get it right. But yeah, there's a lot of resets, man. Like everybody's always like, oh, Marvel's always rebooting, but they're just renumbering. It's the same damn universe it's always been. And it seems like DC, it's like every 10 years they got to burp their ass about something that's going on. And they're just like, hit the reset button. And I'm like, no, I didn't save the game. And I feel like so much can be done through refreshing, but so much is lost as well. So it's kind of hard, man. It's kind of hard to see whether or not this is a universe that I really want to delve too much into. I think this era of like Batman was really big for me, even from the Nightfall stuff all the way up through Identity and Infinite Crisis and into the New 52. That's probably my favorite era of like Bat Family stuff. But beyond that, I just don't see digging into that universe really beneficial, because it's like, well, where do I start? Where do I stop? Where does it get rebooted? What gets changed? We're hopping around all over the place. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest crime among all these crises is after Infinite Crisis. It took only 2 years before they had another big event called Crisis. And that was Final Crisis by Grant Morrison. And I was actually going to try to do a little bit of extra credit homework. I was going to read all of Final Crisis and kind of talk a little bit about it and sum it up. But
that's the Dark Side Crisis book, right?
Yeah, I couldn't make it. I got to issue 5. I'm just like, I was right not to like this book all this time. I still don't like it. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll read the last 2 or 3 issues and change my mind. But
I bet I like Final Crisis better than the rest of them.
I just think among every crisis we've read, the final crisis, they like, yeah, let's put J.G. Jones on the art duties, which sounds great. But J.G. Jones can't keep up that pace of 7 issues. So by the time even issue 6 rolls around, he's already got Doug Mankey's replacement, which is a completely different art style. He's they should have just went Mankey the whole time, in my opinion, and just had J.G. Jones on the covers, but they didn't do that.
I like J.G. Jones, though.
And then the funny thing about Final Crisis is the Final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds, the spin-off title, which had nothing to do at all with Final Crisis, was the better book. And they use that to bring back Bart Allen as Kid Flash, which he was a kid again, and Connor Kent Superboy. It only took 2 years to negate all this stuff. And then what happens 2 years later or 3 years later? Flashpoint.
Yeah, so, I just think
a little bit too much.
I think that the DC editorial got into kind of this cycle of where they were very reactionary to reader habits, and they didn't take the time to really let anything breathe. And I think that New 52 was also guilty of that because of how often they changed creative teams on all of the books that weren't fucking Batman. And once you got to like Rebirth and you got a lot of creative teams that kind of were cemented for at least 12 issues, it gave everything kind of some room to breathe. I think that kind of made you feel like, okay, they're at least investing in these characters in this universe again. All of these DC titles that I read make me yearn to go back and read that Rebirth stuff, because I just think that it boils a lot of it down in a more palatable way. And one of the things that I would say that I have hated about reading these books, it has been aesthetically, they're all over the place. And that's not even to say that artistically they're all over the place, because some of them were, and I think that kind of even worked for what it was. But I mean, just aesthetically, the Captain Marvel family does not fit in with the characters that were created in the 70s, do not fit in with the characters that were created in the 30s, do not fit in with the characters that were created in the 90s. There's just a lot of inconsistency tonally on where these characters come from. And I think that the New 52, for all the guff that it gets, at least did a good job of changing these costumes so that these characters all look like they existed in the same plane of existence. And I think that Rebirth did the best job of taking those classic looks and also doing that same thing with them. Let's bring back the classic look, but let's keep the things that keep it modern and make these things look like they're all from the same universe. It's like watching Star Wars and then watching Phantom Menace. It's like, well, these things do not look like they come from the same universe.
Fair point. Yeah, I think the ultimate winner of the New 52, one of them was Shazam for sure. Especially given that Shazam family and that dynamic was awesome. So, this is our 1 year mark, Andy.
I think so. Episode 52.
Yeah, I guess this would be. Yeah, this would basically be almost our 50th review, because the pilot episodes we didn't really review anything. I think it was probably about either episode 3 or 4 was our first formal review, basically. So
yeah, I think we're close. If this isn't it, we're pretty close.
Great Legend Show says the Marvel family outsold your Batman and Superman in the 1940s, Drew.
Where were they? Where were they in the 80s? Where were they in the 70s? Where were they in the 90s? We're in 2000, and there's a good 10-year gap where there wasn't a Shazam book at all. Where was he?
And we got Comics was explaining Shazam and the Shazam family fit in. Just needs a good writer. No one's even explored Billy Batson that much. Let's go see him on a date. That would be great. Yeah, he, the last issue of Shazam, he just spent time with his substitute teacher. And that was kind of funny and awkward in a Tom Hanks big type of way.
I really enjoyed that Geoff Johns Shazam run, that kind of post-Rebirth run. It really fed right out of his New 52 stuff that he did in the backups for Justice League. I think it didn't really miss a beat. And for my money, the best thing Johns has done in decades.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't disagree. I think his best work post 2010 is probably Shazam related. Absolutely.
I like that Rebirth one shot, but overall as a story being told, I think that Shazam story really works.
All right.
Best Pirate, Psycho, or Butt. I would say I prefer Butt Pirates all day to Psycho Pirate.
Oh, I wish there was a Psycho Pirate series so I could wild card it one day, and you guys would have sick horses.
Gonna throw up your Todd McFarlane trading card.
Oh boy, it's so random.
Oh, that's hilarious. We got Jake Cruz hopping in the chat. What's going on, Jake Cruz? That is an awesome. I like that Superman icon there.
That's dope.
But guys, I think it's time to put a bow on this episode. So the next couple weeks we got planned out. Next week, we're going to be paying a visit to Gideon Falls. I have not read Gideon Falls. These two guys have marked out about it before we started the episode. So, Andy, Gideon Falls is in a DC Crisis. What do you think about that?
Say that again?
I was just making a dumb joke. Tell me how good Gideon Falls is.
Come on. It's Jeff Lemire. Jeff Lemire is easily one of my top 2 or 3 writers right now. Right up there with Brian K. Vaughan. Jeff Lemire wrote Descender. He wrote Ascender. He did the Black Hammer world. He did the Batman, the Smile Killer, and Joker, the Killer Smile.
That's right.
He's done a lot of amazing.
Just put out that Threshing Place Immortal Hulk one shot that was really cool with Mike Del Mundo.
We're talking Gideon Falls here, and I know Chaos and Comics. I think he's even said that he hasn't read Gideon Falls, or maybe he did. I don't remember.
Gore hasn't read it. Gore, get on it, man.
Gideon Falls is good. All I'm saying is buckle the hell up. we can't just read just volume 1. Volume 1's only going to go about 30 minutes. You read volume 1 and you're not going to have enough to really talk about. You got to read a couple of volumes. I've read through it. I'm caught all the way up. Carson, I'm selling it to you, man. You got to read into volume 3. And then whatever you want to do next week for the show, it's just everybody's going to have to buckle up because this is probably the best. Ooh, they're in issue 20. Was that so? That was one of the best comics that started in late 2018, Drew?
It's 2019. It won a Best New Series award. I think it started in December of 2018 or November.
Okay, so I was close, but that's probably been one of the best ongoing books that I've looked forward to every month when it comes out. And they've only got 2 more issues. I think one comes out in another week or 2.
One comes out in 2 weeks, and the other one comes out in December. Will be the 80-page giant finale issue. Number 27 comes out in December, and we'll finish up the series. So it's something that is digestible in trade format. There are 4 trades out right now. 5th trade comes out in November, I believe.
Yep,
so,
and we skipped November, which is going to be tough to see. But this will be the first ongoing series that I've picked up from the beginning for my LCS, seen it all the way through till it ends, and I'm ordering all the deluxe hardcovers that come out from this.
Nice. Fantastic artwork. The mood is really great. You got Dave Stewart on the colors, which are muted yet highlighted by really bold blood reds and stark whites and just Andrea Sorrentino's heavy inks and just really detailed style in a way that you don't kind of expect some of these details to pop the way to do. Really, really cool. A lot of mystery, a lot of intrigue, drag you through it. Very, very visual, very visceral storytelling. And if you like multiple realities, man, fucking strap in, because by the time it gets to that point, you're like, what the fuck's going on? And that might be a little spoiler, but I don't know, man. It's just it's a crazy ass story. It's definitely worth reading, and I think that once you get into it, that first trade will draw you right into the second one, and we'll be talking about 3 trades before you know it.
You get sucked in. They do a really good job with that.
Well, I can't wait to turn on the Twin Peaks soundtrack and read 2 volumes of Gideon Falls for sure. Yeah, that's Comics Explained says look out for the Twin Peaks references. They'll keep me hooked in the book just enough for sure. I can't wait for that. But
Jason, if you're around when we might have to record that and do a premiere for that. But Jason, if you're around, I would love to have you on and be a part of the show.
Absolutely, yeah. As I say, next week we're most likely going to be doing a premiere unless something schedule-wise changes. But the following week we'll be back live for week 54 for Batman: The Long Halloween. For our big Halloween episode, we're going to be reading Batman. Andy, have you had a chance to read that one?
I have not, and I'm really excited for this because I know when we first started Modern Men, when you first invited me to this, it was about that October timeframe when we were shaping stuff up, and we passed that back and forth a little bit. Hey, should we do this? And I'm like, I'm holding off. If we don't do it this October, I'm waiting a whole another year. So here we are a year later. I'm really excited to read that because I've heard a ton of good things, and it's probably, as far as Batman fans go, it's almost always in everybody's top 5 Batman reads for Batman fans.
Yeah, Comics Explained says he's working on that right now. I believe. I couldn't
tell you if I've ever read it. I'm assuming I have, but I don't remember it vividly. So we'll see what happens when I crack it open.
And I believe we're going to have Mr. Gretzky 9966 join us for that episode as well. So if anyone wants on, just feel free to reach out. I think we're going to need some people for that episode because it's going to be special. So, Andy, where can people find you?
Oh, you guys could find me here every Monday on Monday Modern Men. You guys can find me here every Wednesday, too, on the Comic Core for some Wednesday fun and good times. And Thursday, you won't find me there for a hot minute. Drew and Mr. Can, too, are going to do something fun for a while I take some time off for hunting season up here in the Great White North.
Yeah, Jason, we've been tasked with filling in on Thursday, so let's get together and think of something we can talk about.
So then we'll see what happens when we get closer to the holidays again. But you guys can find me on my channel where I'll still be doing my 20-minute, Monday haul and my Wednesday new comic book day pickups. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
What about you, Drew? Where can people find DruManchu?
You can find me on, you go to the YouTubes, right? And you go to that search bar and you just type in DruManchu. Manchu, and then you watch my video about Gideon Falls, you get hyped up for next week, you enter Carson's comics, right? And then his contest, you're going to be really disappointed at the end of it when I win all those comics. And but you got to go to his channel and comment second, because I comment first, except for the other day when I was seventh. But beyond that, you guys can find me this Thursday talking comics Misexplained. Hopefully we'll get him on here and we'll chat it up and chop it up and throw some things around. Beyond that, I'm just going to be coming up with as many great Marvel reads as I can to put on the poll for the next time around, because there's got DC, independent, DC, independent, DC, and then we're going to need to get some Marvel reads on that damn thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like a good plan. Well, you can find me just
Still
like
one
right
out.
there, Seawooder19. That's on YouTube, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. But I've got a lot going on my channel right now. Here in about half an hour, October Reads continues with Friday the 13th, the Avatar Press Special. Never read it, first time reading it. Tune in the review to find out how uninteresting it was. But basically, we're reading a review every day this month. It has been a blast so far. I'm up to 13 episodes as of today recorded, so that means I'm doing it every day, which is kind of fun, actually. I'm getting my editing skills down. But anyway, tune in tomorrow as well, Tuesday night live stream, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm setting my alarm, so I'm awake for it, because I need to do a contest update video, show you guys who's entered into a contest and all that good stuff. Speaking of that, don't forget to check out my channel for the October Reads official contest video, and feel free to enter a comment entry, if you will, or video entry like the great legend did right before we went on air tonight, or like DruManchu has already done, or like my friend Comics. God, I almost said Comics Misexplained. There's too many people starting and ending comics. I'm sorry. We need to end the show before my brain just falls out. So, yeah. Thanks, guys.